Live from Reno, Nevada, this is the Next Level Property Management Multifamily Podcast, offering an inside look at the deals, trends, and strategies shaping the Northern Nevada multifamily market. Delivering over 25 years of high-performance multifamily management and consulting services. Through data-driven insights and market expertise, we're elevating multifamily strategies to the next level. And now, here are your hosts, T. Tran and Chris Fody.
Hey guys, T and Chris here with you with Next Level Property Management. Guess what has started? Legislative session. Are you excited, Fody?
Oh yeah, that's an exciting one.
He doesn't care. He hates it. I start talking about legislation and he's like, oh, just let me know what they say and what we have to do.
Yep.
So it just started. It's going to be the marathon of 120 days in Nevada here. We do session every 2 years. I'm going to do just a super quick rundown of some of the housing / renter, landlord legislation that we're seeing and trying to keep an eye on. And then as things kind of move forward, I will come back and keep everyone updated. I think that's what we're going to do.
Sounds good.
So one of the big things that we're talking about is accessory dwellings. There's an assembly bill that's been brought forward. One of them is kind of specific towards historic properties as an exception to building these ADUs. But even here in Reno, there was a big discussion about it. And I think it was just last week in City Hall talking about zoning and ADUs and the restrictions and things like that. We are keeping a close eye on that. A quick reminder, ADUs are, again, accessory dwelling units. So it's like if you had a pretty substantial size backyard and you wanted to build a little unit in the back, sometimes referred to as mother-in-law quarters or little casitas, that kind of thing. But they're talking about them in the rental setting and how that works and zoning, right? Because that's another thing. If you are in, say, old Southwest Reno, you want to build this ADU in your backyard. What do you do with the parking? Like, where does that person park? Because you know those streets are small. It talks about just kind of the density, those kinds of things. Are we getting proper utilities? It's pretty involved. So it's a conversation that's been going on for a while. A couple of years ago, it kind of died out, but now being brought back.
It's a good conversation to have because we looked at some of this data and there's quite a few people that are doing the multi-generational housing. And so I think it is something that's needed, especially with property values where they're at. It's harder and harder to purchase a home. So people are trying to get the most out of the properties that they own, and whether that's having like a casita, like you said, in the backyard or something. Yeah, I'm glad they're looking at it.
Yeah, and again, is it a kind of mom and pop, it's for family, or is it you're trying to rent it out to somebody, right? So
Sure.
This is where we're trying to figure out how we regulate that. Lots of moving pieces on that. That's Assembly Bill 131, looking at accessory dwellings. Another one, Assembly Bill 211, which is talking about repairs. We have things in NRS currently that cover how we address maintenance, how quickly we need to address certain things, right? This might be a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. I need to read the bill thoroughly. A lot of this started coming back during COVID. And I think people were starting to realize that there were habitability issues in a lot of these rentals. There were some big players in the game who were getting called out for basically being slumlords, not addressing things appropriately. There's a call to action for being a little more specific as to how we're dealing with these repairs and what should happen to the property owner if these repairs aren't being done. So,
Okay.
yeah. So this obviously would affect a lot of us depending on how far they go. Another one, I saw this group together last session. It's a renter's rights bill. So this renter's rights and then the repairs was together before. So now I think they've separated it for a specific reason. I think it was just too much in one bill and it was too much of this like, well, we're not going to approve this part of it, but this part is okay. So they started separating things out. So this renter's rights bill, AB 223, I actually had problems with this bill the first go round last session. And there were things I agreed with. I agreed that tenants should know what their move-in costs should be.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be nickel and diming tenants for certain things that was just part of normal maintaining a property. There were some leases and things that were saying like, oh, for every light bulb, there were just a lot of nickel and diming. I agreed that shouldn't be a thing, right?
Yeah, I think it should be pretty clear what you're expected to pay as a resident moving into your housing. This is a really important thing. You want to make sure you're on track with it. You don't want people getting lost in whatever the agreement has laid out in it and having trouble with their housing. So I think it's important that is clear. And then also on that, what you were talking about with the repairs, for me at least, I don't expect that really to change a whole lot for us. Like, it's interesting to see and watch when something's broken and needs to be fixed, at least for us, right? Like, we're going to go get it fixed as quick quickly as possible. It's unfortunate that there are situations where people aren't doing that. They have to get involved and look at it. But in our world, we're always on top of it. It doesn't matter what it is, what property it is. It's just what we do, right? Get it fixed.
Yeah, I mean, this is just your basic operations. And it is unfortunate because I think that some of this was addressing these smaller landlords who aren't licensed, right?
Sure. Okay.
Actually, some realtors who have been getting in trouble for not actually getting their property management permit and understanding what that really entails.
Sure.
So we see this a lot. I saw it a lot during COVID and when the rental assistance and all that stuff was rolling out, because I was vetting these files as to how are we going to help people with assistance. And all of a sudden we saw a ton of deferred maintenance and things coming up, issues that suddenly were coming up. It really got this spotlight during the pandemic. Some of these issues are a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but overall in the industry, they should be handled in a way that makes sense, right? Yeah, we don't want to leave people hanging when those comes to moments. So one of the interesting things I found in this bill, though, was it was requiring that a landlord provide an email address for the tenants to contact staff. And I was like, are we just not trying to talk to our tenants at all?
Yeah, that's
some
weird.
of us. I mean, some of us maybe, I guess. That's actually written in the bill. They're requiring an email address for tenants to be able to contact staff and the methods of payment. I mean, obviously, we provide an online portal. From your perspective and the accounting side, Fody, I feel like it's been pretty efficient. It works pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, the payment portal is great. What's great about what we do is we have it set up for those that want to pay. Either they can pay with a debit card, they can pay with their bank account, but we always can take payment in other ways too. If you prefer to just drop off a check, you can always stop by our office and drop off a check. So we're trying to make it as easy and accessible to anybody in any method. The online payment portals definitely do work great. We always try to tell our residents, I think sometimes they're a little bit shocked if they pay with like a debit card, they can add some extra fees. I always try to just tell people, like, if you just pay with your bank account, I think it's like $2 or something to do an EFT. So it makes a lot more sense that way. But yeah, I think we have it set up to where you're not going to run into any barriers no matter how you want to pay with us.
Right. And so they're actually saying in this bill that they're requiring the landlords to accept various methods of payment. Like you said, we'll accept checks, money orders, whatever. They can mail it, drop it off at the office.
The only thing we don't do is cash. And you know why?
We do not do cash. And that is okay. And that is not listed in here, thank goodness.
Better not.
But I think that there was a moment in time that all of a sudden landlords were requiring everyone paid online. And as convenient as it is for the vast majority of us who do everything on our phones, you can't tell a certain population that they have to have a smart device to be able to do that. So
yeah, you're right. You've got to have other options for, I mean, in my mind, that's a no-brainer. You've got to have a way for certain people. They don't want to jump on the online payment portal. They'll never even visit the online payment portal. If they have a maintenance issue, they'll call you or they'll email you or whatever it is. That's why they said they want the email. So I really have no problem with any of that because that's just kind of the way we do business anyways. If you rent an apartment from us, you're going to have our emails. You're going to have ways to get in touch with the community manager. Even if it's 2 a.m. and something's going on, we have a line that you can call that will get us out of bed and make sure that you have somebody there to help you through it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is housekeeping, just kind of good practices. But now, unfortunately, we're seeing this being legislated, which makes me a little nervous because there's a slippery slope of, well, now we're going to get really into this nitty gritty. So I always encourage people, of course, in the classes that we teach, have good practices.
Yes,
just do the things, but I don't know. So this bill, it's pretty comprehensive and we'll really deep dive into it as we see it coming out. But one of the last things is actually dog breeds. We've been pretty pet friendly. Personally, the breed restrictions for me, I'm like, no, it's not about the dog breed. It's about the dog. We have a pretty extensive pet addendum, I think, that really covers us and the tenant and helps us address any issues if there are any that arise. This is really talking about specifically insurance policies prohibiting certain breeds. Now, right now, it's for single family homes. They're trying to expand this to apartments to where they can't up your insurance policy or cancel your policy or just deny you a policy based on the kind of dog that you have.
That's interesting. So that they actually have some say in what insurance companies can or cannot ask for?
Yeah, this would be something that's legislated. And it's been a fight that has been going on for a minute, but this is the first bill that I recall seeing that's very specific to addressing that issue, people's insurance. Because you're right, it's kind of weird, right? Insurance is a private entity,
It's weird.
but it's preventing housing for some people.
Well, I get it. And for a long time, people were very strict on breed restrictions, right? The majority of people were no pit bulls, no Rottweilers, no things like that. I think that's kind of become a little bit more lenient, I guess, over the last few years, at least for a lot of the things that we've seen. Including pets in your community is a big deal. A lot of people are pet owners. A lot of people you'd be turning away if you had breed restrictions. I've seen lists from other management companies that had like 50 different breeds on it, and those were all dogs. And then they went into like all the other crazy things, snakes and all that type of thing. But if you had restrictions on that number of different types of dogs, I think you do limit yourself. In some cases, it may not really be necessary.
Well, and do you remember what happened is this knee-jerk reaction? People started getting all the fake service animal certificates.
Oh, it's really easy to do right now online. You can go get a service animal certificate. And then to combat that, now there's all these companies out there who you can sign up with to make the doctors sign off on a thing. And, they sign a paper that says, if I'm lying about this person needing a service animal, I could be held liable. And it's like this whole war now. And I think, at least in our experience, we are very pet friendly at most of our communities, and we don't really have any problems, right?
Yeah.
It's very rare that we do. I mean, we're looking at the whole application process, looking to make sure that it's good fit and everything looks right. And I just don't think we've had a whole lot of problems with that.
We really haven't. Again, I think our addendum is pretty extensive and covers the in case of or in these different situations beyond just the picking up after your pet.
And that's the one we do have a problem with sometimes.
Yeah, so picking up, right? It is what it is when you have pets on property, for sure. So that's interesting that they're actually bringing this into legislation that has to do with insurance policies. I think that's a big one to watch. Overall, Governor Lombardo has said that he actually would examine the eviction process. Now, I don't know if you remember, but I was heavily involved in the eviction moratorium when COVID hit. Part of that, when we kind of had this freeze on everything, was they started looking at the eviction process. And Nevada is very unique. We actually can get an eviction done really quickly.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh, I've gotten one done in
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah. Now, how does that happen? Well, because we're on top of our filing and things like that. But it's initiated by us.
Now, also, in comparison, like I've heard investors come here from California that are like, I have people living in my apartment for 9 months that haven't paid rent. And I think that's a huge draw, right? Obviously, this is why we're seeing a lot of people come here, because not necessarily that things are weighted more towards the landlord. I think they're just more fair. In my personal opinion, it's more fair if somebody is not paying or causing a nuisance, that you have a route to go that will effectively correct the issue. And again, the judge will look at it, that residents, they have every right to show up in court and have their day and kind of say what they need to say about it. But if you're not paying the rent or you're causing like a nuisance, we do have a pretty swift process here.
We do, as long as you're organized, you're filing correctly, you're doing the things that you should be doing, again, good practices, then usually it is a very quick process. Now, the big thing is Nevada is one of these states that, again, where we initiate as the landlord's rep, the eviction, and the tenant has to answer. It's different basically everywhere else. That's why people can't understand how we get things done so quickly here. To me, it makes sense, but this is always how I've done it. But I've looked at the processes in other states and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a lot. This is very lengthy.
For sure.
So the governor has said he was willing to have a conversation and look at the eviction process. In all reality, this is just going to take some serious educating of staff, getting a good perspective from both, right? I mean, we absolutely support tenants. If you know how to do an eviction here, you know that there's posting, there's certified mail, there's all these different notices. It has to be served by a legal process server or an attorney or the deputies. There are things we have to do. We can't just slap a notice on there and then you're out. It's not.
It's a process.
It is a process. So I think that this is going to go back to educating the governor and his office and reminding him like, hey, there is a process that's done here.
I think it's fair. I think it's very fair for both sides. That's my opinion. It's very fair for landlords and then also residents. They have their shot to get in there and also say what they need to say. And I think the judges, a lot of times will listen to that, right?
Oh, yeah. I've had an eviction go right up. We thought we had it granted. And right at the end, there was a motion to stay granted. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll do our hearing and we'll do the things. But there is a process. There's an opportunity there for sure for tenants to get in there and make sure, hey, I did pay my rent. I don't know what happened or whatever the defense is.
That's right.
There is an opportunity there. And with the addition of mediation court, right, there's several opportunities. You can't just get straight to a hearing basically if you have any say in it.
So I'm curious, like when you were doing all of your mediations and stuff, did you find that people were coming to like a resolution together often, or was it tougher to get that done?
When I was doing it with the program, so for my program specifically, this was before, my goal was to get there before anything was filed or before the court got involved, right? I didn't want to be reactionary. So when tenants were reaching out to me saying, hey, I'm getting a notice or a balance due, okay, perfect. Let's get the conversation going right then and there.
Okay, got it.
Even if they had gotten the 7-day posting, pay or quit, right? You still have time.
Yeah.
So at that moment, they bring in the notice to me and say, hey, this is what happened. This is where
I see.
how much I'm behind. So I was still able to get to it before the court got involved.
That makes sense.
Which
Okay.
was the purpose of that. That way we could vet these situations and then actually get rental assistance out to people who really needed it.
Absolutely.
And so that was the big draw of the program that I did with the City of Sparks and Catholic Charities. It's a shame because there were a lot of parallel paths going, but maybe some of the other paths didn't have exactly the expertise. They hadn't dealt with landlord-tenant law
Sure.
before. They weren't property managers. They didn't really understand the process. They were just like, okay, person A, person B, are you going to accept a payment? No. Okay, now you go to a hearing.
Right.
So it was this weird, some people really getting some assistance and some were not. And it was unfortunate to see. Even still, though, like I said, the governor is going to look at this eviction process and have a conversation about it, I'm sure.
Sure. That's always a good one to watch because that does affect, investors coming into the area. Like if they see that start to go a different way, it may cause them to kind of look at things.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, as much as we go, oh, you've got all this out-of-state money coming in and buying real estate and whatnot, but that is a part of our economy. Like if you have investors that stop coming into this area, that's not a good thing. We need to have some balance there. That will be good. And speaking of that, there is also a measure out there for cutting down on the purchase of more than 100 homes at a time. And so they're targeting these huge corporate purchases. We've seen some big companies come in, especially into Southern Nevada, and buy blocks of homes and then rent them out. So there's a little bit of concern there, right? Because in that way, this huge company is not Nevada-based. We don't know how they're regulating some of the things. We don't know if they're really understanding NRS 118. So
Right.
they are looking at that because there's problems there for sure.
And I agree with that
Yeah,
one.
I do too.
I'm all about investing in real estate, but I think that creates a big problem for the communities that they're purchasing these big blocks in.
Yeah, I mean, and these are blocks of single-family homes.
That's
we're
right.
talking.
That's right.
And so now we're
And
taking.
especially, if you're not from Nevada as well, I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, well, and you're taking inventory away from
family.
people who want to actually buy a home in Nevada. There's definitely something that needs to be looked at there for sure. So I'm glad that that one's coming back. We talked about that one last session, but I'm glad to see that's a conversation that's going.
Do you think we're going to hear anything more on rent control or anything like that?
Oh my gosh. I hope not. That one renters' rights bill, the AB 223, I think there is some sort of mention of almost like a sunset kind of clause on seniors.
Okay.
Rent, because ideally the goal would be it's commensurate to whatever, we have a lot of seniors who are dependent on a pension or Social Security benefits, and we know it's not much. We know that. Ideally, it would be commensurate to what their actual benefits are, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have to dig into that bill, so I'll get back to you on that one for sure. But the last thing I would say is the lands bill. And so this is not just a housing renter bill, that this is a huge bill that's been talked about and going on for years now. Jackie Rosen is carrying this over again. Amadei was carrying it before. But this is where we in Nevada don't have enough land. We have a lot of land locked up by BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, right? So most people are aware of this, and this is why now people are looking at building up. We're looking at these density conversations because we have nowhere to build.
Sure.
Vegas has more sprawl, obviously, than we do, but literally living in a bowl, we're kind of at capacity. Lots of conversations about that and how that affects housing, right? The infrastructure of that bill. If there's only so much buildable land left, technically, then what do we do? But again, that brings us to the density conversation, seeing more mid-rises, maybe some high-rises, which is new to our area, right?
Yeah.
That's a big one. So there's kind of an argument there of this is not affecting housing and affordability. I mean, it kind of is, though.
It definitely is. I mean, people need places to rent.
That's kind of my broad overview of the bills that we're going to be watching this session. So I definitely will be coming back and updating you guys as we see some testimony testimony and stuff come through and which bills actually move forward. Some of these just die without a hearing sometimes. So we'll see what kind of support these bills are getting, but we're starting to see these are second time around. The conversations have been happening.
Yeah.
We'll see.
These are a good one to watch for sure.
That's all I have. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll keep you updated.